Okay, it says I'm live, and wait a minute, hold up. Yeah, I think. Oi, all right, I think we're good here. I'm trying something new this time. I think I've got the situation figured out where it won't be an issue. How to say? With audio, but I figured I would start a minute or so early just to give it a little time to see if it's working. So for anyone who is actually joining in, then yeah, I'm actually using some streaming software. Surprise, surprise. I guess I'm stepping the game up just a little bit. And when I did some testing with it yesterday, I believe, everything seemed to work okay. So I hope that will be the situation now. Yeah, sorry for being a little out of breath. I just kind of was hurrying to get everything here. So this week, we have slightly less than last week. 23? No. 22 albums. We have 22, well, 22 or 23, it doesn't matter. But I don't know. There are new things happening on the YouTube screen and on the stream thing, so I'm going to be maybe a little distracted, but I'm not going to let that keep me from moving forward. So what we're going to do is we're just going to jump right into it. Today, just for anyone who's interested, I am going to put timestamps in this as well. So then that way it would be nice if, yeah, there we go. It would be nice if my notes were in front of me. But yeah, all right, there we go. So anyway, as I was saying, I am going to put timestamps in the description later on, so if anybody is watching this after the stream, they'll be able to jump ahead. As it stands, I don't really have... Okay, so this is the 6th week I've done this now, and for the last 5 weeks, I would say there has been a pretty clear album of the week in some sense. In sometimes there have been multiple ones in multiple genres, but this week was a situation where, while there were plenty of good albums, the 7s out of 10s, realistically, if it's, say less than a 5 out of 10, I'm just not going to talk about it because why bother? But for, the 7s out of 10, a lot of good music, but I don't really have anything which I think is just going to be one of the best albums of the year. There are some really good ones in here, and for some people, they might be top picks of, for the year for them. But with that in mind, I've decided just to keep things a little bit more simple. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and start with pop and indie music, and then I honestly don't have any rap this week. I got one that is kind of R&B, so I guess we'll talk about that. Then we're going to move into electronic music, and we will end with rock and metal, because that's either what you love or what you hate. So if you love it, you'll stick around and see what's there, and if you hate it, then I guess you can check out early. And then I have one kind of oddball album which I want to discuss at the end, which technically would fit into one of the genres earlier on, but I think it's just such an eclectic little pick that it's worth highlighting all by itself. So just a minute here and I will get us all ready. So also, I don't think anybody is actually watching this right now. There aren't any people in the chat, but If somebody does tune in, I don't know why I'm saying this, though. Nobody was here to listen to me. Anyway, there's a slight delay. But, yeah, just a second. I need to check one thing just to see. Yeah, okay. All right, we're good. So, and this is this fun little thing, which I learned how to do all by myself. Hey, there we go. So, I can move myself around a little bit. And yeah, that's probably okay, right? So, I think you can see that. I hope you can. We're going to start off with, like I said, with the indie stuff. So the first group we have here is a group, Свидание. This is their Часть, вторая, like literally second part EP. And it's a pretty nice way to start things out. We have 4 gentle, quiet tracks, all fixated on love and longing. And like I said, this is a follow-up to last year's EP, which would have been Часть, вторая. But let's give a little bit of a listen here.
Солнце, я не могу сделать весну. Буду петь.
Just like I said, quiet, gentle, pretty, indie. A little bit like Grizzly Bear, now that I'm listening to it this evening. That's what's coming to mind. And then we'll give Sersa just a listen.
Заминируй мое сердце, активируй, чтобы в клочья разорвало меня.
So, yeah, no, I mean, as I already mentioned, a lot of good music this week, but nothing earth-shattering. But it is nice. It is nice. And that's just going to be the general trend. So, a lot of music to check out just for a listen. Megan, maybe you'll find something that you like there. All right, moving up, we're moving on to Mute Emotions. As soon as it loads. This is their EP Nеспроста. I probably screwed up the pronunciation of that, so you'll have to forgive me. But anyway, with the music. So with each passing week of doing this, I'm more and more convinced that Ekaterinburg and the Ural regions, Ufa, I'm going to lump into that as well too, for obvious reasons, that it's kind of the beating heart when it comes to creativity on the music front here in Russia, at the very least in terms of per capita. Now, this debut indie release is just, I think, a perfect example of that. It combines so many indie rock sounds, plus quite a bit of shoegaze in the guitars, but no one sound ever dominates any of the other ones. It's kind of like if Girl Talk were to have lifted all of his samples from Pitchfork in the mid-2000s. Everything is just kind of here in terms of indie rock from that same time period, the mid-2000s. All of those sounds are kind of been blended and spliced together and reassembled and just kissed with the gift of life from this group Mute Emotions out of Yekaterinburg. So let's give a bit of a listen to what they've got. Again, the audio situation apparently was figured out, but we have an error here. So we'll try again, or we can try another song. Well, this is a bit of a... There we go. I'm going to close this real fast. All right, and we'll see if this one... Yeah, there it goes. It's working now. So... So a lot of the indie sounds that, again, from the mid-2000s that you've heard, if you listen to it long enough, there are definitely moments that are going to call to mind specific artists, but they're very fleeting because the group just shifts between those ideas quite naturally. So it makes for a very interesting listen, and kind of a short one at that, but that's okay. It's their first go. I'm sure they will present us with something a little bit more full in the future. Okay, so moving on from Mute Emotions, we are jumping to the next group, which is Южный север, with their EP, 12 минут себя. Now, they say that every 50 minutes or so, if you're working at a computer, that you're supposed to get up and go and walk around to look at other things, just to take a break, just to obviously physically move around a little bit. And this EP right here, likely unintentionally, is the perfect soundtrack to go for those necessary breaks, both in terms of length and just in terms of mood. This is, again, indie. Obviously, that's the genre we're talking about right now, with the female vocals. But the music leans closer to trip hop. Think Portishead, but also really School of Seven Bells or A Sunny Day in Glasgow. And the tempo on these three songs never goes higher than 90 BPM. So you're just going to stay nice and chill the whole way around. So take those minutes that you need away from the computer, give your eyes a rest, and give your ears a little bit of a treat here with 12 минут себя by Южный север. And also just, a few seconds of silence here because the buffering with the VPN. So, Alright, and then that was Холодная, and then this is Пенный морской, which I think honestly is my pick for the whole thing, but jump ahead. Gets a little bit more energetic, this one, which I suppose is at the end of your 10-minute break. Okay, you're gonna have to go back and do some work, so, or 12-minute break, I suppose. But yeah, just honestly, all three of these EPs at the start here have just been very chill. You could throw all of them together, basically have about 45 to 60 minutes worth of just nice, laid-back indie music. So, all right, I'm gonna give that one a shot. Also, again, I'll repeat this later on, but all of the links for these EPs and albums are down below. All of them are Spotify links, with the exception of two electronic albums, one for Bandcamp and one for Apple Music, and then one of the rock and metal albums is also an Apple Music link because they're not on Spotify. So, all right, moving along, we're going to get to the first album in the indie category here, which is Octopus Heart Attack by Naive Waves. So this is the debut LP out of a group from Tomsk, which is Siberia, and they are emulating the Brit-pop rock sound of the mid-2000s. That was literally all the rage here when I first came to Russia. And for anyone who's watching this who is maybe from Moscow, does anyone remember Blast or Stone Submarines? Just a weird little shout out there. Let's see if anyone recalls those groups. Anyway, the lyrics on this album are all in English, so they are sometimes a bit awkward and stilted, but it's all around, it's just like a fine and pleasant album. And I would say, even though they released it here more or less in the middle of February, it feels much more like a release that should have been slated maybe into April or May, gearing up for the warm, long days of summer. But let's listen to a few of these. We'll go with the first track. Probably a genre or a type of sound that many of us have not thought about for a long time. So that's not bad. I mean, it's nice to be surprised with revisits to sounds that's kind of peaked in popularity sometime in the past, but are perhaps being rediscovered. Maybe something new will happen with them too. Maybe hear a little bit of the lyrics. It's a little stilted, a little awkward. But not their native language, so It's forgivable. So, all right, with that out of the way, we are on to the final album in the pop and indie category this week. And if I had to choose a top album of the week, this would be the one. This is Докажите, что вы не робот by Хватит паясничать. Хватит паясничать. It's prove that you're not a robot, basically. That's not basically, it's what it is. This is indie pop that doesn't take itself all that seriously. There's references to Scooby-Doo and Ninja Turtles and Spider-Man, singing about going into an empty shop in the middle of the night to buy Pringles. There's literally, the final song is about ball lightning. So, yeah, the lyrical content is just kind of all over the place. And that lyrical content and that sort of lack of seriousness is reinforced by the instrumental arrangements. The keyboard and the electronic sounds are just saccharine sweet. They're so over the top. They use audio samples from cartoons, but it's fun. It's fun in the same way that They Might Be Giants or Cake or Presidents of the United States of America are fun on the lyrical front. And this is going to be a bit of a deep pick for people who are outside of the Midwest and who didn't live through the indie scene of like 20 some years ago. Then you're probably not going to know this, but The Show is the Rainbow is another kind of memory that I unlocked while listening to this group. Just less hysterical than Show's Rainbow, just in all senses of that word. But yeah, it's fun music. So let's just we're gonna start off with the first track. All of the songs are fun, but I did notice that like 1, 3, 5, and 7 were the ones I was having most fun with, like this kind of up and down, back and forth. But they are all fun. And all good. Yeah, that really like sweet, almost syrupy keyboard and electronics.
Конечно, я все помню, но напоминай, пожалуйста, почаще. Ты вишенка на торте, я изюм в ключе. Закрылись все кавычки и забытые привычки. Снова думают, а мы забыты были зачем. Приходи ко мне домой смотреть Скуби-Ду и черепашек-ниндзя. Кажется, мы еще можем успеть пересмотреть вчерашние повторы. Только не разочаруйся в себе. Тебя не одолеют плохие мысли. Знаешь, что я всегда с тобой здесь. Так к чему же эти разговоры?
Anyway, yeah, it's kind of fun. Even if you don't really know what the hell they're singing about, it's kind of fun. We'll give the magazine a listen. Not as upbeat, but still goofy.
Как хочешь провести выходной с тобой, мы можем все вокруг обойти, зайти в красиво освещенный луной пустой супермаркет по пути.
So, yeah. So, хватит паясничать, докажите, что вы не робот, I would say is probably the most fun indie album of the week. And honestly, it's the most fun of the year that I've had so far. So if you're looking for something a little less serious, this is going to fit that well. All right, moving on to what would normally be rap, but we're going to go with, it says rap, but this is definitely R&B. And I guess that's fair, right? This is Real New Jazz by Felix Kotlo, or Kotlo. Kotlo, probably, Scarisfo. And, you know, The Weeknd opened the year musically just huge, and it's fair that people who follow in his footsteps are also going to be splashing around in his wake, in the R&B wake. Honestly, what he started years ago. That kind of dark, synthy R&B with the intros and the interludes. We got here specifically, we have a stacked track list. We have guests out the wazoo, as you can see here. And just the silky smooth vocals that feel like he's on the edge of breaking into tears or coming, one of the two. Lyrics are full of heartbreak and horniness in equal measures. So it's perfect timing, I guess, for St. Valentine's Day for people who are looking for it, right? I guess in get out your wine, your candles, your roses, your apologies, and I guess get your freak on with Felix Kotlo here, if I'm saying that correctly. But let's jump into a little bit of this so that you understand what I'm talking about. Realistically, could probably hit play about 10 seconds before we finish talking, so. Synthy intro. Dark atmosphere, or brooding, perhaps. A bit more falsetto than The Weeknd, but
себя в череде звуков этого города. Говорить открыто иногда бывает так дорого. В ожидании прохлады вечера скорого. Спорить с самим собой без доводов, даже без взглядов в твою сторону. Звездная пыль готовит небо для наших тайных интриг.
And поменять, we'll give another one a little bit of a listen here. It is interesting that a lot of the featured vocalists are in the back end. I hadn't thought about that before, but interesting. It's not exactly The Weeknd, but the DNA is there. Alright, I think you get the idea. And that brings us to electronic music. There was quite a bit this week. I don't know if this is because over the last few weeks I have skipped it, or if it's just because there were quite a few EPs this week, so I was able to get through a bit of them more, or maybe I was just in one of those moods. But the first one here, this is the one Bandcamp release that we have this week. This is UKC, or the UK Club label, with their compilation album Deconstruction Part 2. So it's a sampler out of this label, and it's out of Oryol in Russia, which is not the place you would expect to have a happening techno scene brewing at all. It's got a population of about 300,000, so it's like, I don't know, discovering that Omaha is just full of like club bangers and stuff like that. But yeah, this compilation kind of shows. Granted, the label is based out of Oryol, so that's not to say that all of the artists are from there, but still. Yeah, according to the description that they have down here, it's pretty fantastic. Ghetto sounds with different genres: electro, ghetto tech, breakbeat, acid, and cloud flavors. So, yeah, hell of a description. And the music is quite varied, but we'll just jump into it. You'll figure it out quite quickly what they wanted to say. Or maybe not too quickly if I let it play all the way through. A lot of vocal samples throughout this comp album, which is good. I find that always with electro music kind of helps people, I don't know, latch on to the songs all the stronger. And the last one. It's club music. I mean, it's in the name, UK club, so, but sometimes you need a little groovy pick-me-up, so. All right, now swinging back over to Yandex Music, so we're gonna get things reloaded and then wait for the tracks to load. So this next one is from the artist Greenise, but it's also a collection of artists. It's the One Thing Remixes album, and normally the prospect of 7 remixes on the same song, so 7 times in a row, just different remixes, that would seem to be punishment most of the time. But the collection here, the 7 different DJs who reworked this track, they all came in with a different approach, and the result here is we have 7 songs that are all quite sonically different, but all linked through with the same vocal track that just resurfaces again and again, which gives this whole listen this morphing fever dream aspect where sometimes it's really energetic and then other times it's really slowed down, but all the same, you keep these words keep resurfacing, and sometimes they're so distorted that you can almost not make them out, and then other times they're crystal clear. So and honestly, all of the remixes in themselves are quite good. So it makes for, honestly, hearing the same song, 7 different variations of it, but it doesn't really get old. I'll highlight 2 of them here. I'm just going to skip ahead a little bit once it's loaded. You can hear the vocals there chopped up and reordered. More airy, more just kind of, there's a lot of space in that one. And then the Zakladki remix, if it decides to load, starts with sirens and a deep, like, dub bass. It's a lot lower ended, this one, so we'll wait for those vocals to come in so we can you can actually make them out this time. They're highlighted further, so. So, yeah, honestly, this is the type of thing which, when I was first listening to it, I thought I was just going to throw a few of these tracks into the Electro playlist on Spotify. But by the time I got through the 4th track and realized that so far they're all enjoyable and they're all quite interesting to listen to, I actually started to sit up and pay a little bit more attention. And by the time I got through all 7 of them, I realized that, no, like, it stands on its own 2 feet. But now we're going to actually get into EPs, things that are not remixes and compilations. And the first one we have is the Two Nons EP by Non Website. This is going to be off-kilter, really dissonant electronic music. And it's going to be the type of thing for people who enjoy musicians like Arca, Bjork, or Amnesia Scanner. So I'm sure most people will recognize the name Bjork, but beyond that, you might be a little bit lost. It's okay. You'll figure out what the sound is in just a second. just going to jump around so you get an idea quickly. Med is probably, well, it's the longest track on the EP, and it's the one that feels the most like a fully formed song, so. Not quite Bjork vocals, but it's definitely out there. Then Virgo. Assuming it loads, which it probably will. So, build rhythms out of deconstructing rhythms in the first place. It's kind of intentionally difficult music, so. Okay, and yeah, the next one's not really going to be any better in a lot of ways. I don't even know how to pronounce Tokul 10 or Tokul 10. It's too late for me to pronounce correctly, but the Kill Electro EP here. The title of the EP, and then we have tracks here like Hedonism and Crystal Meth. You kind of know you're in for a ride with this one. The music on the artist's Bandcamp page is described as death step. It's basically electropunk with acid, both the substance and the musical style thrown into the mix. The vocal samples are so distorted they sound like paranoid hallucinations, and all of this is moving with an energy and violent drive a la The Prodigy, right? Smack My Bitch Up and things from that era. So I guess just throw it on and go play cyberpunk or something. I don't know. But it's energetic, that's for sure. And loud. I'm gonna jump ahead. It's like a dirtier Prodigy. All right, let's check out some crystal meth. So yeah, 4 tracks of that really chaotic, distorted, aggressive electro music. Good news is we have 3 electronic releases left, and they are all going to be a bit more traditional. This next one by Basique, I don't know again how you pronounce it, Basique, the Friendly Fire EP. These are just club bangers. 4 tracks, just straight up songs that would make the dance floor go nuts. With a bunch of, again, vocal samples from across the spectrum. You've got some of the kind of dirty South rap, but then also vocal samples from Soviet cartoons. Yeah, these tracks go way harder than they maybe have any right to. I was not expecting this. So I was pleasantly surprised. Gonna just jump right into it.
Волк, заяц, волк, заяц, волк, заяц, волк, заяц.
I could just let this one play out from the start. It's pretty easy to understand. So, yep, just that electro banger type music. Next up, though, we have something on the other end of the spectrum. This is Ritual Dance by Arash and Quasar. This is a duo out of Ufa, which is electronic music, and it leans heavily into the Italio disco direction. So it's going to have, I guess, more of a retro vibe. A little bit of some synth pop elements in there, specifically in the synths. And just it has a bit of a futuristic sound overall in terms of the sound palette. But the real treat here, as you maybe could have gathered from the name of the album, is the heavy use of Eastern and Oriental rhythms and vocal samples. It gives these tracks a hypnotic quality. There's a moving atmosphere around them. It just feels like something which might be a modern form of ritual dance. So again, I probably should hit play a few seconds ago, but I'm gonna jump ahead, but there we go. Also, the artwork is phenomenal. I don't know what Pink Flamingo is. I'm getting distracted by that, but this is also phenomenal. I guess we had Crystal Meth just a few albums ago, so we might as well check out Opium now, too. This one has a pretty solid vocal line, if I remember as well. We have the hand drums, though, which is a good sign. Maybe I'm misremembering where the vocal tracks are. Instrumentation, though, is yes, we'll just say Oriental, even though it's perhaps not technically appropriate anymore. Alright, I know there's a vocal track in Truth and Star. 100%. There it is. It's more straightforward, just kind of dance music, but again, it has those additional elements in it. But there is something hypnotic about it. I definitely had it in my headphones last night for a while, and it was entrancing, to say the least. But all right, next up, this is the final electronic one. This would be my top pick, obviously, for the month. That's why it's the final one. It's Фантомы в отпечатках памяти. So phantoms in printed memory, or like printed on memory. I don't know. I'm not gonna try to translate. By Jedi G. This is another one. This was an album that's only on Apple Music that I could find. So this is a guy out of an electronic producer out of St. Petersburg. Focuses on music that is somewhere between UK garage, which is what it's labeled right here, and down tempo. This isn't the unfolding kaleidoscopic electronic music that I love, that I was talking about last week with Underdog, but it's a close second, right? These are tracks that are full of atmosphere. They have more of a traditional song structure, a verse, chorus, alternating parts, elements that feel like it could be a vocal part. And honestly, it a lot of times feels like these are songs just waiting for a vocal part. And actually, the second track does feature vocals, so it's not completely devoid on the album. But these are songs that tell a story more, though, or they attempt to get your imagination to at least create one while listening to the track. These tracks are less sparse and a bit more dynamic in that sense than Burial, but if you're a fan of Burial, you're still going to enjoy something here. Likewise, if you enjoy Bonobo, Tycho, Fortet, Flume, any of those artists, that's what you're dealing with here. Like right out the gate, there's some melody. Jump ahead a little bit. Wait. It's just a lot more atmosphere here. Certain elements have dropped off, others have added in, but we still have the same theme. And we'll do the next track. I would say that there are melodies that you could hum, which is, it's a welcome thing in a genre which oftentimes does not have that. And one more. This is obviously it's connected to the Yakuza, so it's supposed to have a Japanese, like one of those old school. What was the director out of Hong Kong who used to do those really like hard-boiled crime cop dramas? Anyway, it's supposed to evoke that atmosphere. So, yeah, good album. Honestly, this is one which I do think I will be coming back to. I think of all of them so far, I would say this is probably the strongest for the week. I said at the beginning, I will say it again. Most of the albums this week were pretty solid. Like Хватит паясничать was really good. This is a really good album. So the top picks in all of the genres I have here are all good. It's just I don't know how well they're going to stand up against what might come out over the rest of the year. But we'll have to see. This is I don't want to say it's a niche genre, this type of music. It reminds me a little bit of RJD2, but more laid back. But I do feel like it is maybe a type of release that we don't get very often. So, moving along to rock and metal. So, some of you, this might be a time to peace out or turn the volume down. First up, we're just gonna jump into it. We have quite a few here, but quite a few of these are EPs. This is Plach Машин with their EP Kapkan. This is part grindcore, part hardcore, just all speed and aggression. It's a drum machine, and there are other electronic elements in here to kind of freshen up what is otherwise a pretty stale genre. This is, again, from their Bandcamp. This is how they describe the album: a monolithic wall of guitar noise, hysterics of a glitching computer, and unforgiving massacre of sampled drums. So, sounds promising. Inviting, even. So, yeah. A bit more punk in this track. There's that hardcore element too. You get the idea. So, a little EP of that. Next up, the next two actually are going to be black metal. This one, Terra Noctis, the EP from Mortum Demonstro, is symphonic black/death metal. This is actually a one-man band out of Orenburg. I've said it before, I'll say it again, I'm not like a huge fan of black metal, and there's so much black metal just here in Russia, it's kind of absurd. But this is honestly quite dynamic, I would say. It's not so slavish to the traditional black metal or death metal formulas, so... We'll give another one a shot. I mean, it's black metal. You get what you pay for, or I guess not pay for here, but you signed up for, what you're expecting. It's definitely not alternative. The labeling on some of these groups is a bit off, I would say. The snare drum here is think of that march. Not quite so normal for black metal. Still, I do have an appreciation for one-man band type deals, so, shout out to Mortum Demonstro. The next up here, we have, okay, I was thinking of a different one, Thunderbolt EP by Second to Sun. This is a group out of St. Petersburg. Black metal, but it's got a lot of thrash and groove elements in it here. A lot of solos as well. We have 5 new tracks. There's 2 live tracks on this EP as well, so it would theoretically be a lot shorter if they dropped those. The tracks are all inspired by tales of vampires and folklore from the areas up around where St. Petersburg is today, like into Karelia and things like that. So, and if somebody eventually sits down and listens to this, the live tracks are a nice understanding of what this group sounds like live, what kind of energy they have. But I think you can get that too from the regular tracks. Jump into. And maybe we'll have a second song to check out here. We'll see. Going for that brooding atmosphere, I see, right? Again, you get the idea. It's black metal. Moving on. We have an EP from a group, Balcone. The EP is Vada I Sigi. It is a joint project between people from Tajikistan and Russia. And every copy-pasted review I could find of this album on Vkontakte says it's post-punk, and I mean, like, there definitely are elements of that there. It leans, I would say, more into the punk category. It's more pissed off and depressive. It's music that is set amongst the paneled buildings and slowly decaying factories of the post-Soviet world, where the only refuge from the hard corners of reality are to be found in the warmth of summer or in the other seasons, the walls of your Pятиэтажки, Khrushchevka flat. So, but it's definitely more upbeat than the last stuff we were listening to. So that's maybe a selling point. Contrast. I think the post-punk element that people point out is typically in the bass. And it's not as noticeable in this song. There's a lot of pop punk in the sound here. And you'll hear just as much of it in the song Lyata whenever it decides to start. There's a bit of the post-punk here. But it's got way too much energy for what I would typically associate with post-punk. Because I put the album artwork up closer, probably should have been doing that before. So that was Balcone with their Basique EP. Up next, we're getting closer and closer to the end here. This is the album Ciferblatt from Ciferblatt by the group Stala Skuchna. This is the debut LP from a group out of Novosibirsk, which plays Midwest emo, which is a weird thing to say, but it is what it is. And they aren't really that afraid to lean into the hardcore roots of emo. The lyrics here are pretty standard fare for the Midwest emo scene. Worries about the future, repeating mistakes in your life, the repetition of modern life, and the feeling that there has to be something more to it. But honestly, you know, if the formula is not broke, then don't try to fix it. This is the last album I listened to. I literally probably finished listening to about an hour and a half ago, so squeaked in here. The type of music which 20 years ago would have been associated with scene kids. And it's still being made. So, there we go. The guitars there are a little bit more. It's not as Midwest emo as it maybe could be. That's a weird thing to say too, but it's definitely there. Although it can also be a bit more pissed off than Midwest emo typically is. It's probably more just emo with Midwest emo elements. Jump ahead just a little bit. That was the wrong place to jump into. This is very Midwest emo, though, I will do that. And then we get to, I think, the breakdown at the end. Yeah, where we pick up and it's definitely a younger sound. There's no escaping that. But if you're in the right mood, it hits. It hits well. And then they've got this next, we'll call it an album, even though it's only 6 tracks. They are a bit on the longer side. Diving into the Wall is the group, and the album is Dolgi Sezon Dajde. They have it labeled as post-hardcore, which is pretty true. But it's the type of hardcore, or this is the type of album for like people who have ever been listening to hardcore or post-hardcore and thought, hey, I could use a little bit of the squigglies from the Midwest emo sound. And also some, you know, actual breakdowns from hardcore. Yeah, that's what we got. We got all 3 genres here. The squigglies of Midwest emo, the breakdowns from hardcore, and just the song structures of post-hardcore here. It kind of, if you describe it, it feels like it shouldn't work. Like the 3 final pieces of a puzzle that you pull out of the box and you're not actually sure how they're going to fit in, but they somehow magically do, and that's what we got here. There's also elements of black gaze in this, so they pull it off. I did not know how, but they did. And I in my notes here, the elements that they are attempting to put together don't gel as well as perhaps some other musical combinations. But as I have here, Diving into the Wall in that sense is the perfect band name. It's the musical equivalent of throwing the ideas at the wall to see what sticks and then YOLOing into it yourself. It goes as hard as throwing yourself into that wall. So and we'll give Ishod a shot here as well. There's the Midwest emo guitars. With the post-hardcore screaming, shouting over the top. More scene music, I guess, but it's no longer scene music. All right, now this is an interesting one here. This is Sinya Tabletka by Turbogrob. And Turbogrob I first heard last year on their album По всей галактике. And honestly, I was hooked. I thought it was a phenomenal album. They were going full-on clutch, which is good. This year's album, which is evidently the end of a trilogy, I've found out, which I don't really... it doesn't feel like a trilogy, but whatever. This album is basically that. It's more of the clutch sound, but there's more nu metal in it, including, you know, a healthy smattering of keyboards and electronics, depending on the vibe of the song. The main problem I have with this album, though, because musically it's awesome, love music. Problem I have with it are the lyrics, the themes of the song. Most of these claim to be parodies of some aspect of Western society, right? Inclusiveness, consumption, aggression, the pharmaceutical industry, Western action films, how people communicate in the West. And while some of those topics are absolutely valid topics and targets for discussion and reflection, the approach here in the lyrics is about as nuanced as a middle schooler's, or about as nuanced as what it would have been in the first wave of nu metal in the early 2000s, meaning, like, not at all. Now, I don't know, maybe this is a situation where it's a double layer of parody and irony, in the sense that they're singing these from the point of view of like a Vatnik, like a really blinkered Russian version to the aspects of Western life distilled to its most juvenile interpretations. Maybe that's what it's supposed to be. Like, it's supposed to be the dumbest impossible interpretation of life in the West as viewed by somebody in Russia who has no actual, like, insight into it and is just basing all of their knowledge on these topics from, like, maybe a few trips abroad or what they've read online. Maybe that's what it is. So maybe there's like a double layer of irony. That might be the case. It's hard to tell, because there are some songs where it does feel like that, and then there are other songs where it feels like it's just the juvenile interpretation. So I don't know. It would be nice to understand. But yeah, if you don't understand the lyrics, then it doesn't really matter. And musically, this is just a really great album. And even if you can't understand the lyrics, there are times where it's kind of hard to make out what exactly it is they are singing about. But it's good. Turbogrob, from my experience, always has good music. There's the new metal-y sound. Not so clutch, more new metal there. Even the artwork seems really juvenile in comparison to the group's past artwork, so that also, like, the formatting of the letters and the text, so maybe it's supposed to be just as juvenile as possible. I honestly don't know. I'm a little confounded on that. Oh, it's that familiar new metal sound, just slightly updated. How it is with any sound. There's those electronics I mentioned earlier. The singing on this track. I forgot about the singing on this track. So while it's not as good as I'll go to their main page, not as good as like last year's По всей галактике, which of course nothing is gonna. Yeah, this was phenomenal album all the way through. This one's a little bit more rough around the edges, but I feel like I'm gonna ling over it for a while to actually try to figure out if it's tongue-in-cheek or more serious or double tongue-in-cheek. I don't know. So, yep, Турбогроб with Синяя таблетка, which is, again, I feel like this has to be kind of parody on everything, because Синяя таблетка is the blue pill, right? It's a reference to the Matrix and the red pill and the blue pill, and like what happens if the person chooses the blue pill instead of, like, it just feels too internet forum boardy, based on like some of their older stuff too, but maybe I'm way off base there. Anyway, coming up to the end here, two final albums, and then the third one is the oddball one that I was talking about earlier. So this is Бывшие люди by Cuyahoga, which is named after the river in Ohio. The group is. We got the murky soundscape somewhere between old school deathcore and post-hardcore here. And this is a release which swings between those two extremes into radio-friendly, clean singing, and then into the piggiest of grunts and squeals. There are clean guitar tones, then drop into hardened breakdowns, which is perhaps fitting because this album, although rather short, is an exploration of the inhumanity, the darker side of the decadence of the Russian Empire at the end of the 19th century. So right, we went from what just was to these cleans. And it's like that kind of throughout. Actually, let's go with отпечатках. It's kind of like that throughout the album. We got really brutal sounds. Jump ahead just a little bit. So, yeah, still really good release. Quite different from a lot of the other stuff this week. A lot of it was black metal or that kind of post-hardcore emo type of stuff. So this definitely stood out, and it actually caught a lot of attention on the in the digital space, I would say, when among channels that follow metal. So I think they did a pretty good job of promoting the album prior to the release, and you can, I mean, like, it's quite a young group of people here, just straight up. So I would assume that they did a pretty good job of releasing singles to get people excited for it. But all right, the last album is 2. The second, Rasputniki, is the name of the group, and this is a group that's actually out of Almaty, Kazakhstan, oddly enough. I'm just gonna say right off the bat, the first association I had when turning this album on was Interpol, and that heavier, darker, post-punk sound. It is a good reference point. The vocals constantly throughout the album call to mind Turn on the Bright Lights. Although I would also say that there is a fair amount of Block Party DNA in the mix here as well. Additional elements connected to garage rock or stoner rock, which you can hear from time to time. But I think the most interesting thing is, again, like I said, the group is from Almaty in Kazakhstan, so the lyrics, when you actually get into them, there's this constant, and I don't want to like shoehorn Kazakhstan into this idea of nomadic tribes, but the lyrics come back to campfires, the moon, smoke, honey, wine, curses. It's the sense that these lyrics are some sort of unearthed chants of prehistoric nomadic tribes of the steppe, just re-envisioned for the 21st century. So lyrically, it's quite interesting, and musically, it's also quite good. That's why it's the final pick here for the rock and metal category. And I think that this is one that might grow on me as well with time. It's definitely not metal. This is just more rock. Interpol. It's not bad, though. This is 100% turn on the bright lights. Just Kazakh style. Yeah, this is actually a pretty solid album. Just I am re-remembering it, so I perhaps did not give it as much credit as I should have. I also didn't put the artwork on the thumbnail because the artwork is a bit meh. But yeah, they have an a live acoustic song kind of in the middle of the album, which I do think is a bit odd. I know that they didn't want to throw it at the end because it would have. Doj na Veranda is a good way to end it, but this fifth track feels like it's maybe could be dropped or saved for a deluxe edition. Just so much Interpol. All right, one last one here, and then we're gonna jump onto the final goofy album, and then we'll be done. Quite sweeping. There's that like wide open vistas. So yeah, To the Second by Rasputniki. Solid. It's interesting. There's a few of these that upon revisiting here this evening, I have realized that perhaps I underestimated them. Jedi G was one of them. Rasputniki here was another one where I think that they were much better than I had thought about when I was putting everything together this evening. I don't know if, yeah, Indie was pretty well how I thought it was. Fine, but nothing earth-shattering. All right, now the last one. It is a metal album, but this is a weird one. I actually thought about not including it, but then I realized it's just so weird that I can't talk about it. This is Realna Zlaya Sabaka, which is like a really mean dog, and the group is Mopsy na Pragulke, which is literally what are those dogs with the mushed in face? What are they called in English? Oh my god, I've forgotten what they're called. Pugs. Yeah, of course. Pugs on a walk. Mopsy na Pragulke. And this is straight up as it's described. It's kind of a joke for sure, but this is dog wave or sabaka core. It's someone, I think it's actually two people with a guitar and drums, and they just added dog barks and guffs and all of those noises. There are some goofy computerized synth bass lines, and they just made a dog metal album. 4 short tracks, musically dubious, but it is good for the lulz. So just give you a taste. and they're all connected, like being attacked by a Chihuahua or a Retriever or a Doberman or a Bulldog. So it's just one of those albums where it is so dumb, it's kind of fun. And it's like 4 tracks. It's less than 8 minutes, or it is basically 8 minutes. So it's not a huge time commitment. So if you need a dumb laugh, it's not a bad way to go. But you know what? Hold up. I'm gonna go ahead, turn that off, and go back to this. I'm still getting the hang of the streaming tech here. So yeah, I'm still not entirely sure how it works. I'm still getting it figured out. I actually am chatting right now and checking the live stream to see, yeah, okay, so there's a bunch of black around everything, but it's not much that can be done about that. I'll just sort of live with it. Anyway, I will play around more with the live streaming tech in the future. I think from what I've seen, most people just use a second monitor, but I'm not going to get a second monitor to do this. So it doesn't matter. Doesn't matter if you see my screen occasionally while I'm doing music. While I'm chatting about Russian music, then I think it's not a huge deal. It's like you see my screen all the time if you see the streaming software. Anyway, yeah, that was it. So a lot of albums. I don't have the links for the Spotify playlists. I've been updating them little by little again. It's been a little bit slow. I've been focusing on albums, but I would say that I try to add to each playlist like at least 5 tracks per week. Some playlists get quite a bit more though. Just depends on what songs are in my playlist. And yeah, I guess that's about it. I will go ahead and wrap it up. I'll be back on Sunday evening to do the news, and then hopefully on Friday I will have an actual video uploaded. Additionally, I guess it doesn't matter if you've already watched this far. I'll add chapters to this video as well. So if anybody wants to go back and find something, it might be a little bit easier to do. But everyone have a good day or a good evening, and I will